Hello, everyone. I've been asked by a viewer to cover a section of scripture. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 14, 34 through 36. This is it's a pretty controversial scripture. I've heard lots of debates. Lots of people, they really get upset when they read this and when they hear this. And let's just read it for ourselves and let's talk about it. Let your women keep silent in the churches. They are not permitted to speak. They are to be submissive, as the law also says. And if they want to learn something, let them ask their own husbands at home. It is shameful for women to speak in church. And there's a lot of people who use this particular scripture to kind of bash the Bible. It's sexism. It's unequal. It's unfair. It's all this stuff. The first thing I would like to point out is that if you read the book of 1 Corinthians, it's pretty clear that they're having some serious problems in the church in Corinth, and Paul is trying to address these problems. The problem wasn't that women were speaking in church. The problem is that they were being very, very disorderly, like not just the women, but everybody being very, very disorderly. There were people prophesying all at the same time. There were people speaking in tongues and while prophesying, and people were talking, and there's an array of problems that Paul is dealing with in that church. And what he's doing in this letter is he's trying to get things to calm down and go in an orderly direction. So when he gives this as kind of like a command, actually, because shortly after that, just a couple verses later, he actually says that if anyone thinks himself to be a prophet or spiritual, let him acknowledge that the things I'm writing to you are commandments of the Lord. That's verse 37. So this is a command from the Lord. And the reason that it's a command from the Lord is because there are roles within the church, roles within the family. And like it or not, the role of the family is the men are the head of the household. The women are supposed to be submissive to their husbands, and the husband is supposed to serve and love his wife. So the reason that role exists isn't because, this is such a bad thing and it's terrible. No, because it doesn't make the man more important than the woman, and it doesn't make the woman more important than the man. Both are equally important and they are needed. So for a wife to ask her husband a question about scripture and questions about church and questions about the Bible, if she's curious and she wants to learn. So neither one of them are growing spiritually independently from one another, but they're actually growing in unity and in love. And both are having the same knowledge, because as God teaches him, he teaches her, and both are made wise together. And she can also teach other women who don't know or maybe don't have a husband to ask, things of that nature. This thing about keeping silent in the church and quiet in the church, the thing of it is, it's not that the woman is not important. Paul came up with that solution, or the Lord did, and told Paul to write that down. So honestly, I think, when God came up with the roles and the orders of things, they were good, and they're good for us. They're good for us. And, and I'm sure that a woman who would read that would think, how is that good for women? How is that fair? How is that right? The thing is, just because we don't fully understand doesn't mean that it isn't. You know what I mean? Like, ask God, pray and ask God, what does this mean? How do I apply this to my life? What is it supposed to teach me? I'll tell you one thing it's supposed to teach you: humility. Humility. And if you want my opinion, a lot of the men shouldn't be speaking in church, because a lot of them don't know what they're talking about. I've heard many men speak in church and they're wrong. And so people need to learn humility, and they need to learn submission. As a wife should submit to her husband, the husband should submit to God and humble himself and serve his wife. And so a man doesn't come home from work and demand food be put on the table for him. But a man comes home from work and puts food on the table for his family and serves his wife and children. That's the way God intended the role. And because a man is supposed to serve his family. So the woman isn't less important than the man, even in the church setting. Just because Paul says, they shouldn't be speaking in church doesn't make them less important. Lots of women serve in many different ways in the church, and they're all important. They're all important. So keep that in mind, that the role of a woman is very, very important, or else God wouldn't have made them. He made them for a specific role, and it's a good role. And it's a role that the world wouldn't survive without. So keep that in mind. Nobody's less important than another. But learning submission, it's kind of like when I go to school, or when we send our children to school, we expect them to be submissive to their teachers. They have to submit to their teachers. They have to do what their teachers tell them to do. But the reason we want them to submit to their teacher is so they will learn. Without the submission, you can't learn anything. It's like when you're at work and a new person gets hired. And I think all of us has experienced this. The new person comes in and they think they already know everything. They won't submit themselves. And so you can't teach them anything, and they don't last long. They end up getting fired because they don't know how to do the job. They won't learn how to do the job. They can't keep their mouths closed long enough to actually take in the information because they think they already know it all. And that's really the problem that he's facing with these people, is everybody wants a turn to talk and nobody wants to be quiet and listen. And that's really the problem that was happening. So read the whole book. I mean, seriously, don't just pick out one little section and go, oh, see, it's not good. It's, I don't believe that. I don't agree with it. And so I'm not going to listen to it. Or don't listen to it. That's up to you. But me, I look at things like that and I try to look at what's the message with him. What's the reason that he's saying this? What's the point? Like, why? Paul didn't just wake up one day and say, I think I'm going to write to the church and tell them that their women are not as important as the men, and so they need to just make them be quiet. There's a reason he's writing this, and it's a good reason. There's a reason why God put this on his heart to write. And don't skip over it. Don't ignore it. There's a reason for it. Look at the reason and see if it applies to your life. See if it applies to my life. Do I need to be quiet? Submissive? Maybe that's a good question to start contemplating. Not just for women, but for men too. I don't know. You guys let me know what you think in the comments.